Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Niranandamanandamadvaitapurnam. Param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham bhajema. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham bhajema. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 102 of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse, to continue study of chapter 13. Today, we will take up verses 26 to 30 of this chapter, in which Krishna is winding up his teaching of Karma Yoga. We will have chanting of these verses at the end of the class. Now, I request Srimati Meenakshi to give a brief recap of verses 21 to 25, which we studied in our previous session. After the revision, we will have the introduction of the day's topic by Dr. Hegde sir, followed by class explanation of different slokas. Now, it's over to you, Meenakshi.
Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Recap of shlokas 21 to 25 of the 13th chapter. Bhagavan begins the topic of Prakriti and Purusha from verse 20. He says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidyanadi Ubhavapi. Purusha and Prakriti are the two basic principles which are beginningless. Prakriti is matter and Purusha is the self. Prakriti and Purusha together constitute Ishvara, who is the creator of this universe. Next slide, sir. Differences between Prakriti and Purusha can be seen in the slide. We will take up verse 21. Next slide, please. Prakriti is declared to be the Hetu, the cause. Everything in the creation is born out of Prakriti, which includes body-mind complex. Here, Karyam means Stula Shariram, the physical body. Karanam includes the mind, the subtle body, along with the 13 aspects, 5 great elements, 5 sense organs, mind, intellect, ahankara. Karya Karana Kartrutve means nature or Prakriti is the cause of mundane existence. Purusha, synonymous for Bhokta, becomes the Hetu or the cause so far as enjoyership is concerned of Sukha, Dukkha, that is happiness and sorrow. He is the experiencer, I. He is the conscious witness of the body and mind, the Sakshi Chaitanya. Next slide, please. In verse 22, Krishna says, Purusha residing in Prakriti experiences the gunas born out of Prakriti. When the universe evolved, the body and the mind were created, and the all-pervading Purusha got enclosed within the body-mind enclosure. Once enclosed, this Purusha became transactable and hence became the subject, and Prakriti became the object. He identifies himself with the body and the senses, which are effects of Prakriti, and thus becomes the experiencer. What does he experience? Prakriti Jan Gunan, that is, all the consequences, all the products of Prakriti, like thoughts, modifications, raga, dvesha, pleasure, pain, etc. The term Sadasadyoni Janmasu Karanam means the degree of attachment to these qualities or gunas of Prakriti results in the rebirth of the Atma in either superior body, that is Satyoni, or inferior body, Asatyoni, in turn resulting in Samsara Chakram. Verse 23, here the Lord is urging us to disidentify from the Prakriti enclosure and to actually identify with the Purusha, the enclosed content, which is Chaitanyam. This Purusha is not anywhere outside. He is there in each one of us, Asmin Dehe, as the Sakshi Tattvam. How can he be identified? The Lord says, he is Para, free from all limitations. He can be perceived as Upadrashta, the onlooker, intimate witness, Anumanta, who blesses, permits all the activities of the Prakriti, Bharta, the supporter, Bhokta, the transcendental enjoyer, Maheshwara. Paramarthananda Swamiji says, Maheshwara means Swatantra, the free one who cannot be bound. He is the master. When a person learns to separate himself from Prakriti and its attributes, he, being the Jivatma, will actually get the name Paramatma. Ignorant I is called Jivatma, wise I is called Paramatma. This is a Mahavakya. Verse 24. Krishna points out that clear knowledge about Prakriti and Purusha will give great relief from the burden of samsara. The mind has to be trained to understand the difference between the two, thereby resulting in inner transformation. One who recognizes his own nature to be the absolute, infinite, pure consciousness, his misconceptions or avidya ends. Such an individual thereafter, whatever be his conduct, he is not born again. That is, no new vasanas can be created in him, and the old vasanas functioning also drops off since there is no ego here. Thus, this discriminative knowledge, Purusha Prakriti Viveka Gnana, will lead him to moksha. From verse 25 to 35, Krishna deals with Gnana Sadhanani, or the stages for self realization, and also Gnana Phalam. The realization of the self in its pure nature is the final goal of spiritual seeking, and there are more than one path prescribed for this divine achievement. The technique of dealing with our selfish desires depends upon the capability of the seeker. The advanced seeker may use the technique of meditation or dhyana yoga. For those who cannot adopt to this technique, Sankhya Yoga or the yoga of discrimination is recommended. Here, the seeker has great command over his intellect. He can separate the eternal essence or the Purusha from the three gunas of Prakriti through Viveka. For those who are not well versed in the above mentioned sadhanas, the yoga of selfless action is recommended. Thus, a person who follows Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga gets Gnana Yogyata and then ultimately becomes successful, aided by Guru Shastra Upadesha. Swamiji gives us the preparatory steps required to be observed by a seeker, which are Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Vedanta Shravanam, Mananam, and finally Nididhyasanam. In conclusion, we can say Karmanena Mala Nivritti, Upasanena Vikshepa Nivritti, Shravanena Ajnana Nivritti. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Meenakshi, for giving us a very clear recap of the verses we studied in the last class, which dealt with who is this Prakriti, what is this Purusha, because both Prakriti and Purusha exist in me, outside of me, and thereby to claim that I am the Purusha within this Prakriti, this body-mind complex. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We are now in the concluding verses of the most wonderful 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this chapter, we came across some amazing verses. One of these verses earlier we studied is verse 13, where Shri Krishna gives us Name yat tat pravakshami. I will teach you what is Neyam. Neyam is something worth knowing by everybody. And Shri Krishna says, once you know this knowledge, what I'm going to teach you, what I'm going to teach you about Neyam, there is nothing more worth knowing because you will attain to immortality. So we have studied about Neyam. And then in the 19th verse, he concludes another topic where he says, I have spoken to you about Kshetram. I have spoken to you about Kshetrajna. I have told you about Jnanam. I have told you about Neyam. Uktam samasataha. Very briefly, I have explained all this. And if you are my devotee, and if you have gained this knowledge, you will attain to the same level of consciousness. You will enter into my state. Look at the promise Sri Krishna gives in the 19th verse. And then finally, at the conclusion of this Purusha Prakriti, which we just heard from Meenakshi, Sri Krishna gives another great statement. He says, such a person, Vartamanopi, although he is existing within the Prakriti, although he is within this body-mind complex, such a person is not going to be born again and again. He is going to be released from the cycle of Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. This is another promise by Sri Krishna. Now, we have gone through that. Have we got this spiritual enlightenment? That means this is the highest that the Bhagavad Gita can give. Of course, the 14th chapter and the 15th chapter are two small peaks, but there is nothing even higher that the Bhagavad Gita can give. Now, Swamiji tells us very clearly that this is it. Therefore, we have got the knowledge. Let us be very clear about it. Let us have mananam and let us make this our knowledge. And let us not look for any fantastic or mystic experience, because Vedanta is all about knowledge and assimilation of knowledge. We all think that because some great masters like Bhagwan Osho had a wonderful samadhi experience, this sort of experience is going to happen one day. Even in the life of Sadhguru, there is a clear date when suddenly he experienced transformation. We know from the life of Bhagwan Ramana, who had a death experience, and from that day onwards, his life became transformed. See, such things may happen to some people, but for the run, most of us, it is going to be a sequential learning through Shravanam, through Mananam, by great acharyas like Swamiji. We have had this verse in the Heart Sutra of Gautama Buddha. Gautama Buddha got this understanding, but how did he share this understanding? Through learning. Through all his students have gone through a certain process. And here is Sariputra with Gautama Buddha, and he is seeing that he is becoming enlightened. And he says, I have seen you grow from gate, paragate, parasam gate. I've seen you grow from one level to another level, to another level, and now you have gone altogether beyond. Now, this is the process of learning. All of us, we need to assimilate that knowledge. Adi Shankara says, Shloka ardena pravakshami. I'm going to teach you in half a shloka. Yet, what is given in crores of volumes of books. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. I am the truth. This whole world that I experience. This is what Swamiji says, fundamental principles of Vedanta. I am someone other than whatever I experience. And the experiencer, me, is none other than Brahman himself. Swamiji tells us very, very clearly, based on Adi Shankara's Adhyasa Bhashyam, that moksha is not a sadhyam. It is not a goal to be achieved on a particular day. It is a siddha vastu. It is something intrinsic. It is already there. It is not that the guru is going to give me, or, I need to discover or remove all the coverings and to discover I am already that. I have always been free and I will always be free. Previously, I would say, I have only knowledge and I have not been liberated. After going through these verses of the Gita, what do I say? I have knowledge, I have Brahma Vidya, and now I know I have always been liberated. What is self-knowledge? There are people who claim moksha is an extraordinary experience that takes place in a flash, and that such an experience liberates a person. They consider that the special experience is greater than knowledge, and they employ such terms as self-realization or enlightenment. Conventional Vedanta does not accept this. That moksha is not an extraordinary experience, because we don't give a lot of importance to something that comes and goes. On the other hand, self-knowledge is an intellectual phenomenon born out of this process of inquiry that we are going step by step. Liberation can happen only through self-knowledge. And that is what is emphasized by our teachers and Vedanta all along. So let us not look for that momentary experience which comes and goes. And although there are several scriptural statements that the self is something that the mind, yad vacho, manasa, where's the mind and the speech cannot reach. And yet we know that it is an independent knowledge, independent intellect that cannot know the self. But our intellect through the scriptures and the Guru can know what is Brahma Vidya. And that is how our Acharyas have become enlightened. And that is what is the Raja Marga for all of us. From 26 onwards, we will see many very beautiful verses which sum up our learning so far. Verse 26 will be explained to us by Dr. Vikram. Over to you, Dr. Vikram.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Having completed discussion on 6 main topics, that is Kshetra and Kshetrajna, Jnanam and Gneyam, Prakriti and Purusha. In this part, Shri Krishna is describing Jnana sadhana and Jnana phalam. In previous verse, Shri Krishna explained the importance of meditation, karma yoga and upasana. Every seeker has to follow these 5 steps to achieve Jnana, starting with karma yoga, upasana yoga, Vedanta Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasana. People seeking Jnana may appear to follow one sadhana, for example, Jnana Yoga. Swamiji points out it is just that people are at different stages along the spiritual path, having completed the essential steps in this or previous life. Upanishadic teaching may not be available for every seeker. So is it mandatory to get Jnanam only from Upanishad? This question is being answered in verse 26. Next slide. Anne tvevam janatah shrutva anyabhe upasate tepi chatitantareva mrutyum shruti parayanaha. Let's look at the word by word meaning. Anyatu, there are few others, refer to seekers who do not have access to Upanishad. Evam ajanata, such people who do not know Upanishad, that is, they do not get knowledge from Upanishad as an original Vedantic scripture or Prasthanatrayam, Upanishad, Gita and Brahma Sutra. So how do they gain knowledge? Anyabhya shrutva upasate, pursuing knowledge by hearing it from others. So they get knowledge from a teacher who has studied the original scripture and having mastered them is capable of delivering the same message in a simplified manner in a vernacular language. Next slide, please. Te api shruti parayana, individuals who are sincerely committed to the teaching and words of Guru. Cha eva atirantati, definitely crossover. What do they cross over? Mrutyum, mortality, that is, they attain moksha. Sri Krishna is explaining that although Upanishads are the original source of knowledge, but it is not mandatory to study Upanishads only. The essential teaching can be obtained by surrendering to a Brahmanishta Guru who can convey essence of Upanishadic teaching in a manner and language easier for speaker to understand and assimilate. The content is important. It can come from any source, any book, or any language. Next slide, please. Many saints and masters like Swami Vivekananda, Tukaram Maharaj, Kabir, and others have written extensively in different language to convey the core Vedantic teaching based on the requirement and aptitude of the student. To understand verse 6, let's look at as an example how masters have taught Vedanta, a beautiful melodious Nirgun of Kabir, which essentially conveys deep Vedantic meaning and teaching. It goes like, Sunta hai Guru Gyani, Gagan mein awaaj ho rahi hai jeeni jeeni. Listen carefully to the words of wise Guru, the divine sound which has originated in the sky. पहले आए नाद बिंदु से पीछे जमया पानी सब घट पूरन पूर रहा अलख पुरुष निर्वाणी. Everything has come from Nada Bindu or Brahman. Brahman manifests as Prakriti. Everyone in reality is absolute. We all are complete. The individual who realizes this attains nirvana. वहां से आया पटा लिखाया तृष्णा तूने बुझाई अमृत छोड़ छोड़ विषय को धाव उल्टी फास पसानी. God has sent you from there to this address in this world to quench the desire for God, realization by progressing on spiritual path. But putting nectar or immortality aside, you drink samsara poison again and again. Going in reverse, now you are tossing and turning in your own trap. So in this verse, Sri Krishna conveys that it is the content and understanding under the guidance of competent guru that matters, not the language or the book. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram, for a nice explanation of this verse, which, as you rightly said, it is not only through the Bhagavad Gita and the Prasthanatrayam, through so many other ways also. That is the greatness of the Gita. Gita says spiritual wisdom is being, the same wisdom can come through any other source, in any other language, in any other country. And if the message is the same, people are able to be free from mortality and attain to moksha or paramapurushartha. We will continue to see the benefit of what we have learned so far. Verse 27 will be explained by Apeksha. Apeksha, please.
Hari Om, sir. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavar jangamam kshetra kshetrajna sanyoga tad vidhi bhartarsharbha. Whatever being moving or stationary is born, know that, Arjun, it is born out of the union of Kshetram and Kshetrajna. Next slide, sir. In the previous two verses, we have seen that everyone has to go through all the stages of sadhana, which would ultimately culminate into Atma Jnanam. Here, Sri Krishna is talking about everything being, whether moving or stationary, is a combination of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. And he focuses on developing the vision or the attitude, the correct vision or the attitude, where we stop identifying with the perishable Kshetra, that is the field of activities, and start identifying with the imperishable Kshetrajna, which is Ishvara himself. And this we'll understand with the next example. Next slide, sir. What is the correct vision and attitude that Lord Krishna is talking here? So let's look at this example. Even when we look at the freedom fighters, India got its independence. If you would look at how we got it, the freedom fighters, they're always emphasized on the common aspects. To get the whole India united, they focused on the common aspects of a united Indian nation and de-emphasized which was different amongst each and every person of India, which was divided. India at that time was divided into region and religion. You will see everyone overcame the differences of region and religion. And there was no way, if everyone had not gone beyond the region and the religion, India would have gotten its independence. So emphasis was on one thing, which was common, which is united Indian nation. Now, why this example is important? Normally, if you look at this picture, you'll see there are so many people. What we tend to focus on are the perishable things, that is the physical appearances, the thoughts, the faces are different, the physique is different, the thoughts are different. Everyone is looking very different in the picture. That is the different things between us. But if we have to gain our independence from our ajnanam, then we'll have to focus on the common aspect. And what is that common aspect amongst us is the Ishvara aspect, that is the imperishable. Like Krishna has said, everyone is a product of Ishvara plus Prakriti. Now, Prakriti is imperishable and Ishvara is the imperishable. So what is it that we want to focus on if we have to gain independence from our ajnanam, ignorance of knowledge? Krishna says, develop an attitude where we shift our focus from the perishable to the imperishable, that is the Ishvara aspect within ourselves, which is equal in everybody. In each and every person in this picture, the Ishvara aspect is equal, though the perishable aspects might be different, the faces, physical appearances, thoughts, and anything that we want. So he says, all are a product of Ishvara and Prakriti. Let's identify with the Ishvara aspect as ourself. The Ishvara aspect is present in everyone equally. So one who develops such a vision, this correct vision and attitude, where he sees the imperishable in the perishable aspect of each and every individual, he is the one who truly sees and not anyone else. Next slide, sir. So this we have seen in human beings. Now, one more thing where Lord Krishna here has said, even the non-moving life forms are made of a combination of Ishvara plus Prakriti or Kshetra plus Kshetrajna. Now, if we look at the great Indian scientist J.C. Bose back in the 1900s, early 1900s, through this instrument that you see in this picture, crescograph, he established that the plants and the trees, even the mountains, they can also feel and respond to images. And there are conclusive evidences where he showed when a hunter shoots a bird sitting on the tree, vibrations of the tree indicate that it weeps for the bird. And the example too is when a loving gardener enters the garden, the trees feel joyous. And it was through his instrument, he was able to demonstrate this, that even the trees and the plants go through the various emotions that even all human beings and animals go through. That is love, hate, fear, joy. Every emotion that a human being possesses is possessed by the non-moving living forms also. The changes in the vibrations of the tree reveal that it also possesses consciousness and can experience different emotions. These observations corroborate to the fact that when Lord Krishna's statement here that all life forms, whether moving or stationary, possess consciousness. So, like again, I'll repeat this meaning of this verse here. Whatever being moving or stationary is born, know that it is born of the union of Kshetram and Kshetrajna. Arjuna, let's destroy our Jnanam through Jnanam, where we develop the correct vision and the attitude of focusing on the imperishable, which is the common aspect in every human being, and moving as well as immovable object living beings, and defocus on the different or the perishable aspects. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Apeksha, for a nice explanation of this verse, which speaks about the right attitude in which you see the world around you. That which is stationary, that which is moving, like living forms, and also the whole world, because everything that you see is a combination of Kshetra, Kshetrajna. There is one Upanishad which talks of Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yat Kinchit Jagatyam Jagat. Can I see Isha? Can I see the Lord in everything that is stationary or that is moving, that is alive or not? To be able to see that consciousness principle in me, the non-perishable entity, and to see the existence principle outside. And that is the vision of Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam, very beautifully brought out in this verse. The next verse, verse 28, will be explained to us by Dr. Anupama. Dr. Anupama, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, verse 28. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatsu avinashyantam yaha pashyati sa pashyati. In this verse, we see the benefit of self-knowledge or jnana phalam. A jnani sees Atma as universally present in all beings. This jnana phalam is called samadarshana, advaita darshanam, or veda darshanam. Abheda darshanam. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram. What is the significance of samadarshana? We know that we are an inseparable mixture of Atma and Anatma. The Anatma, also called Prakriti, Kshetram, or the reflected consciousness, is Anitya, Savikara, Nitya, and Achetana, described here as Vinashyatsu, or perishable. Diagonally opposite to this is the Atma, also called Purusha, Kshetrajna, or the original consciousness. It is Nitya, Nirvikara, Satyam, and Chetana, described here as Avinashyantam, or imperishable. We see that they are diagonally opposite, yet mistaken. We erroneously identify with the tangible Prakriti. A Jnani, on the other hand, claims the Purusha, but just uses Prakriti. He perceives the intangible Purusha with Shastra Jnana Chakshuhu, or the third eye of wisdom, which enables him to see the same Purusha in all living beings. Sarveshu Vinashatsu Bhuteshu Tishtantam avinashyantam parameshwaram. In order to realize this, we need to shift from the triangular to the binary format. As long as Jiva Bhavana or Dasa Bhavana exists, the triangular format of Ishvara Jiva Jagat persists. Jnana Marana cycle continues to exist. With Atma Jnana, the Jiva Bhavana or identification with Prakriti ceases to exist. Then, with the realization of being a Karta, a Bhukta, a Pramata, there is no Sanchita, there is no Agami Karma. The existing Prarabdha Karma becomes relevant only to the Prakriti component. Remaining anchored in Brahma Jnanam, one becomes a Jnana Nishta or a Sthita Prajna. This is a state of Sahaja Samadhi wherein one doesn't lose sight of Purusha Tattvam in every being, Sarveshu Bhuteshu. And what type of Purusha? Samam Tishtantam, present uniformly as Sakshi Chaitanya. Ya Brahmadi Pipili Kanta Tanushu, Prota Jagat Sakshini, as Apeksha just said, from Brahmaji to a plant. Krishna has already mentioned this in chapter 5, verse 18. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Panditaha Samadarshana. What is this Atma? It is Parameshwaram. That Atma which is present in all beings, Sarveshu Bhuteshu, including Jivatma, is Paramatma. Remembering the fourth capsule, I, the Kshetrajna, am not affected by any event outside Kshetram, the external world, or inside Kshetram, the Panchakoshas. Instead, I lend Sat Chit Ananda to Kshetram. This intellectual comprehension is called the right vision. Yaha Pashyati, Saha Pashyati. He who has this proper perspective, the Samyak Darshanam alone, understands Pashyati through the eye of Shastra. Shastra Chakshusha Janati. He alone sees the truth. Others are open-eyed, scripturally blind people. Thank you.
Dr. Anupama, for pitching in the last moment and giving us a very nice explanation of a very important verse which focuses on samadarshana. The previous verse spoke about how to have a correct vision, and here we talk about what is the benefit of having the right vision, the ability to see the divine in and through everything, and to be able to see yourself in everybody. And once you are able to see this common factor in everybody, there is no question of any form of discrimination, because everyone are the same original truth with different reflecting from different kinds of medium. Such a vision, Sri Krishna says, is the true vision. If we do not have this true vision, we land into samsara. Our basic fundamental error is ignorance of the fact that of Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Prakriti, Purusha. This is the basic difference that we have. Once we have the ignorance of these two, that is called Ajnanam, and the second mistake is called Agrahanam. We grab onto the wrong thing. We identify with the Prakriti. We identify with the Kshetra, and thereby we make all the problems. So therefore, as nicely explained, once we know about Purusha, Prakriti, once we know about Kshetra, Kshetrajna, this distinction and knowing who I am, make the correct decision and see yourself in everybody and have that vision of samadarshana. The next verse will be explained to us by Triveni. Over to you, Triveni, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Samam Pashyan hi sarvatra samavasthitam Ishwaram na hinasti atmana atmanam tatahyati param gatim. Those who see God as the Supreme Soul, equally present everywhere and in all living beings, do not degrade themselves by their mind. Thereby, they reach the supreme destination. The previous verse gave the first phalam of right vision or samyak darshanam. In this verse, Krishna gives the second benefit of this knowledge, which is amrutatva prapti, transcending mortality. As the prayer goes, asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amrutangamaya. Ma means me. Please take me from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, from mortality to immortality. That amrutatva prapti is the benefit he gives. Samam pashyan. This wise person learns to have the samadarshana in and through the vishamadarshana, which is required for transaction. Samavasthitam Ishwaram. Again, Ishvara here means Purusha, the Atma. Here the Ishvara refers to Arupa Ishwaram, free from all attributes. Therefore, only Samam, which is same in everyone. And Samavashishtitam, which is very much present as the very Adhishthanam, the support of Prakriti. The wise person sees all the time through Jnana Chakshu. And what is the benefit he attains? Param Gatim Yati. He attains the highest goal of immortality. Amrutatvam Yati. He attains immortality. And here Krishna presents that in a beautiful way, that this Gnani does not destroy himself thereafter. So according to Krishna, every Agnani samsari is destroying himself. Even though he puts the blame on the world and the people, according to Vedanta, world does not create any problem. Because of ignorance, we are killing ourselves. We are all self-destructive people. This is based on the Ishavasya Upanishad, which says everyone is committing suicide. How? Shankaracharya explains this in two different ways beautifully. How does a person destroy himself? Because of the self-ignorance, he identifies with the body, the anatma, which leads to body identification. And once identified with the body, we become a karta. As Atma, I am not a karta, but once Dehabhimana comes, I become a karta. And as a karta, I perform varieties of actions, earning punya and papa. And according to Vedanta, it is these punya papa karmas which are responsible for the creation of the body, and I alone am responsible for the repeated birth and death of myself through the arrival and departure of the body. Therefore, I am creating myself and I am destroying myself from the standpoint of the body continuously. As long as karmas continue, this birth and death will continue. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. And then Shankaracharya gives another meaning also. He raises the question, how can a self-ignorant person kill his own higher nature, the Atma? Because after all, the Atma is indestructible. How can you say ignorant person kills the Atma? Shankaracharya says that an ignorant person figuratively kills the Atma. He is unaware of and so disowns his higher nature, and therefore the benefit of Purnatvam, Abhayatvam, etc. that he can derive from this is denied to him. Since the higher nature is as though absent, Shankaracharya says we have killed or destroyed the higher nature. The Agnani is committing suicide and is destroying himself, and therefore every Agnani destroys himself from the standpoint of the body and from the standpoint of Atma also. And therefore Krishna says, Nahi hinastyatmana atmanam. Unlike an Agnani, Agnani does not destroy himself from the standpoint of the body or the Atma. And therefore he is not a self-destroyer. He has discovered immortality. And that is said in the last portion. Param Gatim Yati means immortality, Amrutatva. Those who learn to see God as the Supreme Soul present in all beings begin to live by this knowledge. They no longer seek personal gain and enjoyment in their relationships with others. They neither get attached to others for the good done by them, nor hate them for any harm caused by them. Rather, seeing everyone as a part of God, they maintain a healthy attitude of respect and service toward others. Thus, They elevate their mind by seeing God in all living beings and finally reach the supreme goal. Namaste.
Thank you, Triveni, for giving us a nice explanation of this verse, which again talks about another benefit of having such a vision, of being able to see the one in the many. When one knows thee, then alien there is none, no door is shut. Oh, grant me that bliss of being able to see that one in the play of the many. Such a person is not going to destroy himself. Very strong word used here, which is also there in the Isha Vasya Upanishad. When a person is not ignorant, when a person is ignorant of the Atma Tattva within ourselves, then what happens? Although I am Atma, although I am Parabrahma Paramatma, I am not able to experience or manifest that. And therefore, it is almost like killing the Atma, although I know the Atma can never be killed. But on the other hand, if a person is able to discover the Atma Tattva, a person attains to Param Gatim, or the highest destination possible. With that, we come to the last verse for today, verse 30, which will be explained by Dr. Jagdish. Dr. Jagdish, please.
Gurubhyo Namaha. The first shloka in the chapter by Arjuna was the query about Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, and Kshetrajna. Let's have the slide. Yeah. Prakriti is a doer with Indriyas, Manas, and Buddhi, whereas Purusha, like the vast sky, is a non-doer or the Sakshi. In the last session in verse 22, Krishna had announced that the cause of rebirth in superior or inferior wombs is due to the three gunas, but consoled us that still the path to Supreme Soul can be through knowledge, meditation, or even action. That was in verse 25. Now today, in verse 26, Krishna was even more considerate to us. He says, even sheer devotion or listening to the saints, one can cross the Bhavasagara. In fact, Dr. Vikram gave us many beautiful sayings by great saints in the beginning of the class today. Now, coming to this slide, Swami Paramahansa, in fact, very eloquently conveys the three phalas, or the benefits. The first one is the samyaka darshanam of Purusha and Prakriti. The second is amritatva prapti. You transcend the mortality. And then the third one is akartatva prapti. It is the non-doer phala, which in fact is the essence of this shloka 30, I'm sorry. So we go to shloka 30, slide sir. Prakriteva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvasa yah pashyati tat atmanatva akartaram sa pashyati. Now rearranging the words, sa yah pashyati, he who sees, karmani kriyamanani, actions as done, prakritya eva cha, by prakriti only, sarvasa tata, by all means, atmanam akartaram, the self is actionless, pashyati, but only sees. Now, having seen the padartha, next slide, sir. What do I really learn? The ego of being the body and the pride of being the doer, it traps our soul in the samsara of life and death. Now, just remember this slide. The symphony is conducted by the conductor. The skydiver is controlled by the coach. The soldier is commanded by the captain. The conductor, the controller, and the commander is the capital T. Yes, true by the laws of karma. So we have a doer and a overseer. Next slide, sir. In this slide, you see some similarity. This is the sun, of course. The heat and light are in the sun, the Sakshi. But the Surya is never scorched. Yet, it is the Surya who is as much a cause for photosynthesis to sustain life, or a forest fire for destruction, or a solar panel for progress of humanity. In other words, the karta, the doer, is a choiceless bhokta. Coming to the last lines of the shloka, Prakriti eva karmanani. Prakriti, the body, mind complex, can do the karma, but the Purusha is Nirguna Nirakara Atma and he is immune. Yet only in his presence, Prakriti does everything. So, having gone through the Atmanam Akartaram and Atmanam Pashyati, the last phrases, the only way out of the vicious cycle of rebirth and death is for Prakriti to tangentially take off like a rocket, transcending all the Prakriti attachments away from the engulfing orbit right into the space towards Brahman. Next slide, sir. We just need to assimilate Vashishta's advice to Sri Ramchandra in Yoga Vashishta. He says, externally exert as if results depend on you, but internally realize yourself to be the non-doer. In the next class, which is in the next class, Krishna guides us to the Brahmatva Prapti, the fourth level after the Akartatva Prapti. And that will be the final trophy for all of us. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for a nice explanation of a verse which is extremely difficult to understand. And you have nicely explained through good examples and through slides. What we need to see is who in me is the one who does everything. There is something in me because of which everything is supported, but the real me does not do anything. And all actions are done by Prakriti. And thereby, the more you observe your life, you will see the greatness in the discovery how things really happen. The more we need to be watchful. We have a wrong idea that I am doing everything. And the more we observe, we will see the best things in life happen. And whenever I see myself as a doer, that is when we struggle and when we suffer. The climax of the understanding of Karma Yoga is to understand this aspect of how or who is the one who does all the actions and who in me is the Sakshi, who is the observer. With that, we have come to the end of this class. We intersperse our classes with the classes on Disha. And in this section of Disha, we will come to a higher understanding of Karma Yoga, which will be covered to us by Ramaji. That will be on the 20th of June, the 14th Disha session. And now we will have Ishita Shetty, who will chant these verses for us. Ishita, please.
Anye tvavajanantah shrututvanyebhya upasate tepi jachitaranteva mrutyum shrutiparayana yavat samjayate kimchit sattvam stavarajangamam kshetra kshetnagnya samyogat tadvidhi bharatarsabha samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtanam parameshwaram vinyastva vinyayantam ye pasyati sapasyati samam pasyani sarvatra samavastim ishvaram nahi nastam atmanatmam tato yati paragitim prakriteva chakaramani kriyamani sarveshah yapasyati tatmanam akartaram sapasyati.
Thank you, Ishita, for a nice chanting. Thank you, teachers of the day, for a wonderful session. Next Friday on 24th June, we will take up the last 5 verses of the chapter 13 from 31 to 35 for our study. Before that, on Monday, 20th June, let us log in for Disha 14 at 6:45 p.m. Until then, Jai Shri Krishna. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.